Hey everybody, Andy Abramson, Elementum here with my friend Steve Wick, who is in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, which it's April for us right now. It's recording. I heard rumors of snow. Steve, is that true or?
There's been snow around, not in our town, but we definitely get frost. It's frosty out there right now.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
it is not in Texas right now. So yeah, so love the opportunity jumping on Steve. Want to do an interview with him today just to kind of let you see and experience and get to know some of the people that are working with us. And so Steve, why don't you give just the people who are watching or listening to this just a little bit of background on you?
Yeah, so I'm the associate pastor at a free church, Evangelical free church out here. Our context, we're as a church, we're around the 200, 300 range. We're not very big, I would say. Um, and I've long felt, even before coming out here, my role as the associate pastor of discipleship is it's kind of a little bit of everything. When I came out, a lot of my time was to go into the youth ministry, so I spend most of my time working with the junior high, senior high youth. We're looking and we're developing and constantly putting time and energy into something that we call community groups, and it's kind of a missional community group model. And when we came out here, my wife and I, we actually came out and we're like, hey, if you hire us on, would you be okay with us starting a college ministry, young adult ministry? And I would say the church was great with like, hey, not only are we okay with you doing that, we support you in doing that. And so there's been a kind of a blessing where I've been able to dip my toes into the young adult world, and stir some things there that have been a huge blessing for us personally, as well as in a church community and the community as a whole. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. So why young adults? So why, you come into the church, they don't really have anything for college students, young adults. So why was it important to you to jump in and start working with that age group?
Yeah, actually, it started for me as a young adult. I actually was going to a Christian college out in Illinois, and one of the things that I was noticing, I was at a small church out there, and we had some pastors who were trying to develop a young adult ministry, and I kind of took over that for a little bit of time. Totally green, had no idea what I was doing, and one of the things that I was realizing as I was doing that, and then actually in the years that followed, as I was living out in a suburb situation in Illinois, was that there's a lot of young adults around, and none of us really knew how to have community with each other, especially not when it came to the church. So I'd look around and like there were tons of churches in the area, and I was like, I'm looking as a young adult, just looking to get plugged in somewhere. What do you have? And most of them were like, oh,
Yep.
there were like the mega churches. Those were the ones that had young adult ministries, and they're like, go there. And I'm like, okay, but what if I don't want to? And so there was a place where it kind of burned a passion on my heart early on of like, okay, we have young adults in our church. I'm a young adult in the church. How do I connect? How do I have friends? And we had some people who kind of like that, those pastors who were kind of looking in those ways, and it kind of said, I want you guys to connect. And it opened our hearts up to the importance of community as young adults. And it kind of started a journey from there on of like, this is a hole in a sense in ministry. There's even with lots of churches around, there's not a lot of churches that are looking to love on young adults and disciple young adults in
Yeah.
this way.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So here's the question I want to ask is, so you're not a huge church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not a full-time college pastor, like you have multiple roles. So a couple different things I'd love for you to speak on. And one is, speaking to some of the people who just kind of navigating those multiple roles and why it's important even for you to do that, but then also maybe some of the benefits of a smaller church. The reality is you're not going to, a lot of churches out there are never going to have full-time staff that just
mm,
focus on college and young adults. It's going to be a worship pastor and a young adult,
mm,
youth and young adult, associate, like there's going to be multiple. And so what's the importance of that? And then what are some of the benefits that you've seen as a smaller church, as young adults have begun to engage in the life of the body?
mm. So, thinking about the role, one of the things that, I mean, young adults are a big passion of mine and my wife's. But I look at it, and again, recognizing that my role covers a lot of ground. I have anything up from sixth graders to their parents and their grandparents and beyond, in a sense. And so I'm looking at it, and one of the things that it has forced me to do is to think, one, the whole scope of the ministry of the church.
Mm.
So when I'm thinking about youth, or I'm picking up a discipling tool for youth, it's giving me the ability to think, okay, here's where this affects youth, here's where this affects young adults, here's where this affects parents
Yeah.
or grandparents. So it's actually allowing me to think of the scope of ministry across the church. Another thing is that it really forces me to realize I can't do it all myself.
Yeah.
There's just no way. I have, only so many hours in the week, and it forces me to go, I can't be the center hub of every ministry.
Mm.
In fact, it actually is forcing me to think of, how am I discipling key leaders to help equip the key leaders to be the disciplers?
That's good.
So it puts me in a different role. And I'll be honest, and I know if you're listening out there and you have multiple roles, you've probably heard this too. Like, you get pushback from people because they're like, oh, but you need to be working with my kid right now. You need to be their small group leader. You need to be, and you get that pushback. And for me, what I'm seeing is like, no, do you not realize that I might not connect with your kid as well as the small group leader that they're with?
Mm.
In fact, they have tools, they have a story that they need to share with your kid, that's not my story.
Yeah.
And so they have the gift to disciple them. And as a pastor, as a leader, one of the biggest callings for me is to help them be the leaders, help them be the disciplers that God's blessed them to be.
So good. That's
So
so good.
that, yeah. And there was a second piece. I think I missed the second piece for you.
No. So, and then the second one is like, because this is one of the things I love about your guys' story and your guys' church, is the benefit that of a smaller church, of young adults now engaging in that church, like how the rest of the community gets to experience, the life of those young adults. Why don't you just speak to that a little bit, of just the benefits of a smaller church, of engaging, and what you feel and see as a result of what you're doing.
So yeah, just to give you guys a little bit more context, I've been out here, I think this is year 4, something like that, and we jumped into the young adult ministry right out the gate here. And I'll be honest, like, first 6 months, there was like one young adult that we got to hang out with. By the end of the first year, we maybe had 3. Like, it was not a explosion of people coming through the door in young adult world. And it's like, it's easy to get discouraged, especially if you're in the early stages in a small community. You feel like, is this really worth it? So here's what God, I feel like, has done in our community, in our church. One of the things, like, I early heard from people in the church, like, yeah, we just don't have a lot of young adults here. And as I'm looking around, and the more that you look around, the more that they get on your radar, right? So I was looking around, I'm like, but there's one, and there's one, and there's one, and there's one. And so there's like, and that's like the 4 young adults who are still hanging around in our small community who haven't left. And I'm like, yeah, they might not be a college student right now, but they're still a young adult.
Yeah.
And so it kind of created this vision of like, let's not forget them right now. In fact, there's a value for what they can do in the community. So we connected up with a couple of young adults, and honestly, the crazy thing is God has blessed us with some of those who have, from the very beginning, we still have relationships with. And what's happened as we've been investing into those 1s, those 2s, those 3s, we've been able to see the relationships with them grow. And we've actually seen a lot, like if we look back at the journey with some of these young adults, their spiritual growth has just exploded from it's like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing, like, to maybe I should consider being a missionary, to like, how can I simply going from, I don't know who God created me to be, to maybe I can serve. And I look at that and I'm like, that, even that little piece, that's not the end game, but that's a win. Mm. And so we've been seeing little wins along the way. And so what's happened is God's kind of forged a community together where, like, we're not huge on teaching in the sense of like, we're not doing a big like production on a Wednesday or something like that, where, okay, everybody come to us and we're going to do some teaching and then we're going to break out into small groups, things like that. That's not who we are. A lot of who we are is we're going to meet, we're going to have fun together, and we're just going to share real life. And some of that's going to be, we're going to have spiritual conversation as a part of it. And so we actually are intentional in our times to talk about where people are at, have fun, and start opening those doors little by little to enter into spiritual conversation and into the spiritual world. And so what's happened is the young adults, as we've been equipping the young adults, and we've kind of been a leadership core behind it, they've actually shifted from it was all us to now we're partnering with a lot of the young adults, and actually they're carrying at points more of the weight of the ministry than we are.
That's so cool.
And so what's happening is, like, you see them thinking in shepherding, you see them thinking in who do we need to go after, and it's like all you can do is step back and go like, God, this is awesome. What's happened in our church as a whole, we're, again, a small church. There have been multiple times where I have had people in the church come up to us and go like, man, the young adults, they're so close with each other. Like they really care about each other. Like this girl who left to be a missionary, like they were crying because she left. And there's the adults who are looking at this and going like, I don't have community like that.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a place where it's encouraging the adults to go, this is a picture of like where I should be going personally. And so it's actually raising the health of our church as a whole, because they're seeing that maybe there's something more that I'm missing out on. And it's not just because young adults have more time. Our young adults do not have more time. They are sometimes busier than even other people because they're doing a lot of ministry. They're doing a lot of stuff. And so like, yeah, but the value is different.
I love it.
And it's changing it all.
It's so good. And I love, one of the things I've got a chance to be out with your church, and I love, seeing the young adults now sitting together on Sunday mornings, and that some of your best youth leaders are now your young adults, it just the value that they bring to the body is just, man, we love it. It's so good. Now, here's the next thing I would love for you to speak about, because there's a lot of churches out in the, across the United States that are in smaller communities. Like they have no college, and they maybe only have a junior college. The assumption could be is that all the graduating seniors leave. Why don't you talk about some of the challenges of doing young adult ministry in a smaller community, but then even some of the benefits of doing young adult ministry in a smaller community as well?
Yeah. So to give you guys a picture of what we have out here, all we have is a junior college. We got 2 years in a sense, with college students who are coming in just fresh from within the community to get into the college area. And so one of the challenges that we found is there's a lot of transition. I would say, in young adult ministry, there's a lot of transition, period. But when you shrink that down to 2 years or less, it speeds the transitions up. So it's really easy in one sense to get discouraged and go, is it really worth it? I look at, however, some of the young adults who we've had who were a part of that junior college, and some that even aren't a part of a junior college. And for those 2 years to see, or even a year to see the growth that can happen in their life, even the impact. So we had a young adult who was out here for a year. found us, total kind of an anomaly. I'll be very honest. He found us online and asked questions about what we were doing. Like, that doesn't happen. I'll be very honest. And he was like, "Hey, I would love to get involved. I'd love to get connected." And he took it on himself and he dove in to our community. He started getting to know some of the people in our church, and he became pretty quickly one of the guys that was known in our church. It helped he was super tall,
Yeah.
but he got like adopted into some of the families in the church.
Mm.
And there's a place where, I mean, he just recently got married, and I think he's down in where it's warm, I will say. And there's a place where there's still some connections with him, even in our community. I mean, there's some students who they finished the junior college and went on to like the Michigan Tech or stuff like that. They're still connected with our group. Now, certainly not to the same level, and I encourage them to invest where they are, but the friendships are still there, where they're still checking in on us and we're still checking in on them. And by
Awesome.
us, I don't mean me. I actually mean the young adults are checking in on them. So like I look back and I'm like, we need to stretch our perspective a little bit beyond, oh, they're only here for a year or a year or two. And one of the things that I feel like that I constantly am reminding myself and inviting others into is, what's the impact for the kingdom if you have them for 3 weeks? How can you just move them just another step towards Jesus, even in those 3 weeks?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And maybe you have them for 3 years or more. And the cool thing is, every step of the way, the challenge and the unique opportunity is, it's like you're starting over all the time. So like the school year starts, we didn't know this year how many leaders we were going to have. We didn't know who was going to be around, who was going to be on our core team. Wound up a lot of praying, and God brought in everyone we needed. And so, and a little bit in an unexpected way, we're like, is it going to be just my wife and I again? I don't know. Yeah. And right now we've got like 5 or 6 on our core team that aren't us, and that's a God thing.
So cool.
But it's like every season, what are we going to do in this season to say, okay, God, what now, what next, and roll with it.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. I love people who are in smaller communities, multiple roles, jumping in and experiencing the joy and the benefits of young adult ministry. So here's the last kind of statement or question I have for you, Steve. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the partnership with Elemento? You know, as we've got a chance to walk alongside of you for a couple of years now. What have been some of maybe the highs, you know, kind of the important points for you, as well as, you know, maybe just speak a little bit to the process and what we've had the opportunity to walk alongside and do with you.
Yeah, actually the partnership with Elementum, I can't recommend it enough, to be honest. And I'm able to connect with some other free churches in the area, and when I hear that they're even considering Elementum, I'm like, yeah, do it. And in part, it's because there's not only do these guys have a great love for your ministry, they have great tools. They've been doing it for a long time, and I can't tell you how many times I've done something like Leader Advance, and I think that was probably one of the early things that we did. Is we went to Leader Advance, my wife and I. It was just the two of us, and being able to meet with other young adult ministry leaders in the area, people who are thinking in young adult ministry. One, it made you realize, hey, you're not alone. You're not the only one who's wrestling with some of these things. But also, it created an opportunity. Like we've been going to Leader Advance every year since, and it created some friendships, not only with Elementum, but also with the other ministries that we've been able to see. So the cool thing is, every year, it's a total God thing, I feel like, because when we go to something like Leader Advance, or we have some of the regular trainings with the modules, it always seems like, especially Leader Advance, it's a springboard for us for the rest of the year. It really creates an opportunity, and these guys are really intentional about thinking, okay, you need to think in your ministry, not here's the here's what you guys all need to do, but how do you take what you're hearing? And I want you to actually take the time right now to talk about it with your team. And I will say these guys are masters and growing in mastering constantly how to equip us to be leaders who are multiplying leaders and multiplying disciples. And it's a heartbeat that I'm like, it's everything from the theological stuff that they offer, from intensives to the leader advance itself, to the regular communication like this. It's invaluable. Even just have people checking in on you and go, hey, like, are you still alive?
Yeah.
So, which I know if you're doing young adult ministry, there's probably a point where you're in a multiple role, you're probably like, yeah, I'm not entirely sure right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
Cool. Well, it's been a fun journey with you, Steve, and praying for lots more years ahead as we continue to work alongside of you. And it's been fun to get to know you over these years, but also just see what God is doing in you and in your ministry around you. And so thanks for taking a few minutes and doing this interview with me today.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, everybody, that's get to know one of our partners, one of our leaders so Steve Wick. We'll talk to you later, everybody.